I have a bit of a confession to make before we get started today.
Oh boy. What did you do?
Well, I spent I want to say about 6 hours last Sunday just playing one of those city building simulators.
Oh yeah.
You know the type where you're basically a god hovering over a map,
Right.
just dragging and dropping roads and zoning residential areas and plopping down power plants wherever.
The classic mayor mode paralysis.
Ugh.
I know it well.
Yes. It was honestly ridiculous. I was sweating over whether to put a subway stop in this one specific spot or if I should zone it for a high-density factory.
Thanks.
Thanks. And in the game, I just kind of guessed. I thought, hey, a factory looks cool near the river. Let's just do it.
Makes sense visually.
Right. But then you fast forward like 10 minutes in game time, and my virtual citizens are coughing, property values have completely tanked, the little in-game advisors are yelling at me.
Total disaster strikes.
Complete disaster. I was losing the game. But it hit me while this was happening that real people actually have to make these decisions every single day.
They do.
And the stakes are, a little bit higher than a game over screen or just reloading an old save file.
Much higher. I
Right.
mean, you're talking about the literal difference between a thriving, breathable community and a complete ghost town.
Yeah.
And really, that brings us right to the mission for this deep dive today. We are tackling AP Human Geography topic 6.9.
Which has a very catchy title,
Officially, and yes, somewhat dryly, it's called Urban Data.
which I know sounds like a total snooze fest.
It does.
But stick with us, because what we're really uncovering today is essentially the operating system of the city. We're looking at the source material to see how local governments and geographers take the incredibly messy, chaotic reality of millions of people living together, eating, sleeping, working, driving, all of that, and how they turn it into actionable plans. Basically, how do they avoid making that SimCity guess?
It's a fascinating question because cities are just incredibly dense with information.
Right.
Think about it from the listener's perspective. Every time you swipe a transit card or you pay rent or file a permit or even just complain to your neighbor about the noise from a construction site down the street.
You're generating data.
Exactly. You are a data point. The challenge, and this is really the core of our discussion today, is how the architects of the city actually capture that data to make decisions that don't, well, ruin lives.
And we're going to see a bit of a showdown today as we dig into this. It's sort of a battle, or maybe a marriage, between the hard numbers and the human stories.
Quantitative versus qualitative.
That is the central tension of this whole topic. Do we govern by the spreadsheet, or do we govern by the vibe?
Right. And as we'll see in the sources, relying too much on one of those while ignoring the other is usually a recipe for complete disaster.
Absolutely. But before we get into the specific data types, I think we need to establish who is actually holding the controller here.
Good point.
Our sources call urban governments the primary architects of the city. But that feels, I don't know, a bit abstract. When we say government in this context, are we talking about the mayor giving a big speech on the steps of City Hall?
Not really, no. We're talking about the gears of the machine,
Okay.
the bureaucracy, the city planners. The source material breaks this down into three massive buckets of responsibility that dictate how a city actually functions on a daily basis.
Right.
The first one is zoning and land use.
Okay, let's unpack that one. Zoning. This is essentially the power to look at a literal plot of dirt and legally mandate what can and cannot happen there.
Precisely. It's the city saying this square mile is legally designated for sleeping and living.
Right.
And that square mile over there by the highway is for heavy machinery and noise. It's the most fundamental tool they have.
And if they get the data wrong here, you end up with elementary schools right next to chemical plants.
Which is generally frowned upon.
Generally, yes. Which brings us to the second big bucket, which is infrastructure management.
Right.
This feels like the unsexy stuff, the pipes and the pavement.
Well, it's unsexy until it breaks.
Very true.
This is the decision-making process regarding the physical skeleton of the city.
Oh, huh?
So, do we spend $10 million fixing the potholes on Main Street, or do we need to rip up the ground and install entirely new sewage capacity for that giant new condo development uptown?
Right. And you can't really guess on sewage capacity. That seems like a classic measure twice, cut once kind of situation.
You really shouldn't guess now.
Yeah.
And then the third bucket is resource allocation, which is simply where does the money actually go?
Because every city has a finite budget.
Exactly. Does it go to public transit? Does it go to parks?
Yeah.
Policing? Subsidies for affordable housing?
So if you're a city planner, you basically have these three huge levers. zoning, infrastructure, and money.
Right.
And you have, say, 4 million people depending on you to pull the right ones. You can't just walk out onto a balcony, look at the skyline, and say, I feel like building a bridge today.
That's the vibe check method of governance. And historically, it's very dangerous.
Yeah, I bet.
To govern with what the experts in our sources call a high confidence rate, you need evidence. You have to strip away the guesswork.
Right.
And that is exactly where our first character enters the stage today. Quantitative data.
The mathy stuff.
The statistical backbone. Quantitative data is exactly what it sounds like. Quantity.
Right.
It is numerical, it's measurable, and it's objective. When a geographer looks at a city through this specific lens, they aren't seeing stories. They're seeing a matrix of numbers.
So give me the inventory here. What specifically are they counting?
The big one is demographics. This is the WHO.
Okay.
Age distribution, family size, birth rates versus death rates, all of that.
Right.
Then you have economics. What is the median income in this specific zip code? What's the unemployment rate?
Mixed stuff.
Then there's geography, strictly speaking.
Yeah.
So population density, literally, how many bodies are packed into this square kilometer?
Wow.
And finally, housing. What does rent cost? How many units are vacant?
The collection method for all of this seems pretty straightforward, right? It's the census. That big form I fill out every 10 years where I promise I actually live at my address and I'm not running a secret hotel out of my living room.
The census is the holy grail for this, absolutely. But it's not just the census.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's also tax records, carefully worded surveys, employment reports from the state.
Okay.
But here is where it gets really tricky for the listener to grasp sometimes. Having a massive mountain of data is actually useless if you don't know how to organize it.
Right.
You can't just look at a spreadsheet labeled the United States and decide where to put a new bus stop in your town.
And this brings us to the concept of scale that the source heavily emphasized. I think this is where a lot of people probably get tripped up.
Oh, definitely.
We have these two terms in the material, census tract and census block. And honestly, they sound totally interchangeable, like tract, block, whatever. It's just a neighborhood.
They definitely are not interchangeable. Think of it like zooming in on Google Earth. The census tract is your standard zoom-level medium view. It's a specifically designed geographic area that typically holds between 4,000 and 12,000 people.
So roughly the size of a standard suburban neighborhood.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
It's small enough to see trends, like, oh, this tract is getting younger or this tract is getting richer.
Right.
But it's big enough to protect individual anonymity. You can't single anyone out.
That makes sense.
But sometimes a group of 4,000 people is still way too broad. Sometimes you need to see what's happening on a specific street corner.
Okay.
And that is where you zoom in all the way to the census block.
And does a census block literally mean a city block? Like 4 streets and a stop sign?
In a city, yes. In a dense urban environment like New York or Chicago, a census block is often literally a single physical city block.
Right.
But, and this is a crucial detail from the source scale, is entirely relative to density.
Oh, I see. Because if I'm in rural Wyoming, a single city block might have 0 people in it, just cows.
Exactly. So in a rural area, a census block might actually cover huge swaths of land, miles and miles of territory.
Just to get a usable number of people.
Right, just to capture a few dozen households. The block is the smallest unit of measurement for the census, but its physical size changes wildly depending on how close your neighbors are.
Okay, so we have the tract, which is the neighborhood view,
Yeah.
and the block, which is the street view.
Yes.
But why does this distinction actually matter to the architect of the city? Can't they just use the most detailed data all the time? Why not always default to the block data?
You would think so, right? More detail is better.
Yeah.
But data can be incredibly noisy. Let's look at the example from the source material. Suppose you are a planner tasked with building a brand new elementary school. What are you looking for?
Well, I'm looking for kids, specifically a high concentration of young families.
Right. If you look at the state level data, it's totally useless.
Sure.
If you look at the city level, it's still way too broad. You need block level data.
Because I need to know exactly where they live.
Yes. You need to know that this specific subdivision has 300 toddlers who will need a desk in exactly 2 years. You need that granular, street-level detail to know where to place the playground.
That makes total sense. I don't care about the toddlers 3 miles away because they won't go to this specific school anyway.
Exactly. But now flip the scenario. Now you are planning an international airport.
Okay. Much bigger project.
Do you care if one specific street in the city has a lot of toddlers?
No. I care if the entire region has enough travelers to actually support a Delta hub.
Right. If you looked at block-level data to plan an airport, you would be drowning in completely irrelevant noise.
I see.
You need large-scale data. You need broad regional population trends. So the real skill of the geographer isn't just gathering data, it's choosing the exact right scale of data for the specific problem they're trying to solve.
That is fascinating. So quantitative data gives us the skeleton. It tells us the what and the where. Like there are 5,000 people here, they make $60,000 a year, and they live in apartments.
Correct. It creates a structure. But skeletons don't have personalities.
No, they don't.
And skeletons don't vote.
And that is the perfect pivot because the source explicitly mentions that numbers can feel sterile.
Very sterile.
And I totally get that. You can look at my credit card bill and my address, and you might know my purchasing habits, but you don't know why I bought that stuff.
Right.
Or if I'm actually happy living where I live. You don't know if I'm planning to move out next month just because I hate my neighbor's dog.
And that right there is exactly why a city cannot run on spreadsheets alone. We need the qualitative data.
The feely stuff.
Exactly. If quantitative is the skeleton, qualitative is the flesh and blood. It is descriptive, it's narrative-based, and it is inherently subjective. It captures the lived experience.
Now, lived experience is a bit of a buzzword these days, though. How do you
Yeah.
actually capture that systematically? Because you can't exactly put happiness into an Excel cell.
No, you can't. You capture it by asking people. Yeah. You conduct open-ended interviews. You hold town hall meetings where citizens are allowed to basically yell at you about their problems.
Sounds fun.
It's part of the job. You read field reports. Geographers even use something called ethnographic studies.
Which is fancy academic speak for what exactly?
Hanging out.
Just hanging out.
Literally observing a community from the inside.
Wow.
Yeah. Watching how people interact with a local park or how they navigate a particularly dangerous intersection on foot. It's data observation through active participation.
But what does this tell us that the census didn't already tell us? If I know 5,000 people live in a tract, isn't that enough?
It tells you the invisible data.
Invisible data.
Yes. Let's talk about perceptions for a second. A police report, which is quantitative data, might say a certain neighborhood has a historically low crime rate.
Okay.
Statistically speaking, it is the safest place in the entire city.
So the city planner sees green light, safe area, done.
Right. But if you actually go and interview the residents, they might tell you they are terrified to walk outside at night.
Really? Why?
Because the streetlights have been broken for 6 months, it's pitch black, and there's absolutely no foot traffic, so it feels incredibly dangerous.
And that feeling actually changes their behavior.
Exactly.
They stop walking around, the local businesses lose money because no one is out, and the street becomes totally desolate.
You nailed it. The statistics said safe. The qualitative data said dangerous. Both are actually true in their own way, but the qualitative data is what explains the human behavior.
Right.
It reveals attitudes about things like zoning changes, reveals cultural context. Maybe a community fiercely resists a new condo development, not because they hate tall buildings, but because it threatens a historic gathering spot that doesn't officially show up on any city map.
The source had a really great framing for this. It said quantitative shows the trend. Like people are moving out of this neighborhood. We see the line on the graph physically go down.
Yeah,
But qualitative explains the reason.
exactly. Why are they moving? Is it the rent prices? Is it the quality of the schools? Or is it simply that the vibe of the community has fundamentally changed? You cannot fix the problem if you don't know the why.
So we have the math, which is high confidence but sterile. And we have the feels, which are deep, but honestly pretty messy.
Extremely messy.
Right.
And really hard to scale. That's the ultimate trade-off here.
Right.
You can count 4 million people in a single day with a computer algorithm. You cannot have a deep, meaningful coffee chat with 4 million people. Qualitative data is expensive to gather, and it's much harder to generalize.
So the magic really happens when you force these two things to work together.
Synthesis.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate goal for geographers.
Yeah.
The source points to really complex issues like gentrification or segregation. You can see segregation on a map perfectly. It's just different colors separated by a hard line.
Right.
That's the quant. But to understand the legacy of that line, the tension, the actual resistance to integration on the ground.
To understand the human cost.
Exactly. To understand the human cost of that line, you absolutely need the quail.
I want to ground this for you, the listener, because synthesis sounds really great in a textbook. But in the real world, these two data sets very often fight each other.
They do.
The source detailed a specific case study about a factory that really drove this home for me. It's called the conflict of economic growth.
This is a classic urban planning dilemma. It happens in almost every major city at some point.
So let's set the scene here. We are the city government. What's the situation we're looking at?
Okay, you are looking at a specific district in your city. You pull up your quantitative data,
The spreadsheet.
and the spreadsheet is flashing red. You have high unemployment. You have low median income.
Yeah.
The tax base is shrinking rapidly because people just aren't making enough money.
So logically, as the planner, I need to inject money and jobs into this area as fast as possible.
Right. The math creates a very clear equation. Problem equals lack of jobs. Then a large corporation approaches the city. They want to build a massive manufacturing plant right in the middle of this struggling district. And they promise 500 new jobs.
Well, from a quantitative perspective, this is an absolute slam dunk.
Right.
I solved the unemployment stat and I increased the tax revenue stat. It's a total no-brainer.
If you are governing strictly by the spreadsheet, you sign that permit immediately. The numbers balance perfectly.
But then you have to hold the town hall meeting, you have to get the qualitative data.
And that is exactly where the plan completely explodes.
Yeah.
You interview the residents, and they aren't talking about economic injection at all.
What are they talking about?
They are talking about noise.
Oh.
They are talking about industrial pollution.
Yeah.
They are absolutely terrified that the heavy truck traffic will make the local streets completely unsafe for their kids to walk to school.
Wow.
They are worried about childhood asthma rates spiking.
So now you have a massive conflict on your hands. The math says, yes, this factory saves the neighborhood. The people say, no, this factory destroys the neighborhood.
And here is the real aha moment from the source. The trap that planners fall into is thinking that the math is the real data and the people are just being emotional.
Right.
Just in biasm.
Exactly. But if the government ignores the qualitative concerns and builds that factory anyway, what actually happens?
Well, the factory gets built, the concrete is poured, the jobs arrive.
Briefly. But look at the long-term result. Because of the noise, the pollution, and the trucks, all the supposedly emotional qualitative things,
Yeah.
the residents who have the financial means to leave, they leave.
Oh.
They sell their houses, probably at a loss, and they move out to a quieter suburb.
So the property values crash because nobody wants to buy a house right next to a giant smokestack.
Yeah.
And the neighborhood just empties out over time.
Precisely. You tried to solve an economic problem with the factory, but you actually created a massive demographic crisis.
Right.
The neighborhood hollows out, the local tax base you were so desperately trying to save actually vanishes completely, and you're left with the factory sitting in the middle of a ghost town. That is just brutally ironic.
It is.
The qualitative data, the complaints about the noise and the trucks, was actually a much better predictor of the economic future than the hard economic data was.
That's the key insight right there. The vibes predicted the behavior. They predicted the migration that the spreadsheet couldn't possibly see yet.
Wow.
It completely proves that you cannot treat a living city like it's just a static math problem to be solved.
Going back to where we started this whole conversation with SimCity, in the game, if I screw this up, I literally just click the bulldoze icon, delete the factory, and try again.
But in the real world, once that concrete is poured and that infrastructure is laid down, it is there for 50 years.
Right.
The mistake is permanent. It scars the city.
So the big takeaway for you listening right now isn't just that data is good, it's that urban data is actually a checks and balances system.
I really like that framing. Quantitative data tracks the physical and economic growth. It tells us if the organism's getting bigger.
Right.
But qualitative data ensures that this growth actually aligns with human needs. It tells us if the organism is genuinely healthy.
And for the person listening to this right now, whether you are sitting on a bus or driving to work or just walking your dog, you are actively part of both of these data sets right now.
You really can't escape it. When you filed your taxes this year or filled out that census form, you became a dot on a density map. You became a literal statistic in a census tract.
Right.
But when you complain to your city council that your commute is way too long, or when you tell a friend that you absolutely love the new murals in your neighborhood, you are actively becoming part of the city's narrative.
You are the qualitative data.
Exactly.
It definitely makes you look at those giant construction cranes downtown a little differently. You just have to hope that whoever signed off on that massive building actually looked at the spreadsheet and listened to the story.
We can hope. But honestly, as data gets bigger and cheaper and easier to collect automatically, the temptation for governments to just ignore the story and follow the algorithm gets so much stronger.
That's actually something I've been chewing on a lot since we started researching this deep dive.
Yeah.
We live in the era of big data now. We have smart cities, we have sensors on literally every light pole, we have companies tracking our phone movements 24/7.
Oh, yeah. We can track traffic flow in real time now.
Yeah.
The planners know exactly where everyone is at any given second.
We are getting terrifyingly good at measuring the what, but if decision-making becomes purely algorithmic, if we rely 100% on the data we can measure with a sensor, what happens to the parts of our lives that simply can't be measured?
That is the perfect provocative thought to leave on. There are invisible needs in a city.
Yeah.
The need for aesthetic beauty. The need for a feeling of spiritual connection to a physical place. The human need for silence. You can't put spiritual connection in a census block.
No, we can't. And if you can't measure it, does the algorithm just assume it doesn't exist?
If we aren't careful, we might use all this amazing data to design perfectly efficient cities that absolutely nobody actually wants to live in.
Something for you to think about the next time you see one of those zoning change proposed signs taped to a telephone pole in your neighborhood. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today.
Always a pleasure to explore the map with you.